Hi Reddit, it's me, Michael. I've been sitting here thinking about how life used to feel so normal, so full of love and routine. Amanda and I were married for 8 years, and I thought we had it all figured out. She wasn't just my wife. She was my best friend. Everything in our lives revolved around our family, and honestly, I thought we were happy. We had 2 kids, Jason, our 8-year-old explorer, and Lily, our 4-year-old princess. Jason was the type of kid who could spend hours asking questions about everything. Dad, do birds get tired of flying? Or do you think dinosaurs would like pizza? He'd ask, and I'd answer as seriously as I could, even if I had no clue. Amanda would laugh from across the room and say, "You're encouraging him, you know." But I loved it. It was our thing. Lily was softer, gentler, a cuddler. She'd always climb onto my lap with her stuffed bunny, demanding, "Daddy, tell me the story about the bear and the bees." It didn't matter how many times she heard it. She laughed like it was the first time. Amanda would sit beside us, stroking Lily's hair, saying, "You've got him wrapped around your finger, you know?" And Lily would just grin like she knew she did. Amanda and I had this way of being together that just felt easy. We weren't big on grand gestures or over-the-top romance. Instead, it was the little things that made us click. She'd pack my lunch with notes inside. Stuff like, "Don't forget to smile today," or "I love you, even if you snore." I'd make her coffee in the mornings, exactly the way she liked it. 2 sugars, no cream. And she'd say, "You're the best," planting a kiss on my cheek before running out the door. Our evenings were sacred. Once the kids were asleep, we'd curl up on the couch, Amanda's head resting on my shoulder as we half-watched TV. She loved crime shows. I pretended to care about them. But mostly, I just liked the quiet, feeling her close. When it was time for bed, she always fell asleep with her head on my chest, her arm draped across me. "I can't sleep unless I can hear your heartbeat," she'd murmur, and I'd laugh. "Good thing you married me then," I'd reply, pulling her closer. Weekends were family time. Every Friday night was movie night. Jason would argue for action films, Lily would demand princesses, and Amanda and I would end up flipping a coin. Popcorn would get everywhere. Lily would inevitably fall asleep halfway through, and Jason would talk through the entire movie, pointing out plot holes. Amanda would nudge me, whispering, "I don't know where he gets that from," even though we both knew it was her. Life wasn't perfect, but it felt good. Solid. We loved each other in a way that felt real and steady, like we could handle anything as long as we were together. And then, out of nowhere, things started to shift. First, it was small stuff. I started working more hours, picking up extra shifts to save for a vacation Amanda had been dreaming about. She started going out more, dinners with coworkers, drinks at the bar after work. "Late night again?" I'd ask when she came home smelling faintly of perfume and wine. "Yeah, just catching up with the girls," she'd say with a soft smile. "How are the kids?" And I'd fill her in, telling her about Jason's newest dinosaur theory or Lily's latest bedtime demand. Felt normal, or at least I told myself it was. Looking back, I wonder if I missed the signs because I didn't want to see them. It was easier to focus on the good parts, the love and the laughter, than to admit that something was starting to change. Hi Reddit, Michael here again. So, things at home started to get a little weird, and it all began with what should have been a harmless, silly thing, snoring. One night, out of nowhere, Amanda woke me up, shaking my shoulder and yelling, "Michael, you're snoring again. I can't take this." I was groggy, confused, and honestly, a little annoyed. "What? I don't snore," I mumbled, turning over and trying to go back to sleep. But the next morning, she brought it up again. "I didn't sleep at all last night because of you," she said over her coffee. "You kept me up with that chainsaw you call breathing." I laughed, thinking it was a joke, but she didn't smile back. "I mean it, Michael. It's getting unbearable. And I have to get up for work." "Come on, Amanda. I've never snored in my life," I said, shrugging it off. "Maybe it's you. Have you ever thought of that?" She rolled her eyes and muttered something about how I always dismissed what she said. At the time, I didn't think much of it. It felt like one of those silly things couples argue about. But then she started making it her mission to prove me wrong. One night, I woke up to the dim glow of her phone's camera in my face. "What are you doing?" I asked, half asleep. "Trying to catch you snoring," she whispered back. I shook my head, rolled over, and went back to sleep. The next morning, she showed me the video. It was mostly darkness with a few seconds of muffled noise. Nothing you could make out. "See," I said, smirking. "Nothing. You probably woke yourself up snoring and blamed me." Her face turned red, and she didn't respond. But after that, it became this running thing. The kids picked up on it, laughing and teasing me. "Dad, don't snore too loud tonight, or Mom won't let you sleep in the house," Jason joked one evening. Even Lily joined in, giggling as she said, "Daddy, are you a snore monster?" I played along at first, but in the back of my mind, I was irritated. I knew I didn't snore. I never had, not even once. So why was Amanda making such a big deal out of this? Things only got worse from there. Amanda started snapping at me over small things. Things she'd never cared about before. "Why do you always leave your socks on the floor?" she asked one morning, waving a pair in my face. "I don't know," I said, confused. "I've always done that." "Exactly," she said, exasperated. "You've always done that, and I'm sick of it." It wasn't just the socks. She started nitpicking everything, noticing things she'd never mentioned before. "Why do you chew so loud? Do you really have to leave the TV on so late? Can you at least try to fold the laundry right for once?" At first, I brushed it off, figuring she was just stressed from work or tired from not sleeping well. But the snoring thing kept coming up, like it was some kind of proof that I was ruining her life. "You should see a doctor," she said one day. "Maybe you have sleep apnea or something. Or maybe you're imagining it," I shot back. "Ever think you might be the one snoring?" That didn't go over well. She stormed off, muttering about how I never took anything seriously. I stood there, feeling completely baffled. What was happening to us? I couldn't take it anymore. The arguments, the constant accusations, and the way Amanda was picking at every little thing. It was driving me up the wall. If she was so sure I was snoring and ruining her nights, I needed proof one way or another. So I borrowed a recorder from a colleague at work. And not just any recorder, this thing was high-tech. "Check it out," my buddy said, handing it to me. "This bad boy is voice-activated. It only records when there's sound loud enough to trigger it. We just got these for security monitoring." I laughed and shook my head. "I'm borrowing it for a little personal investigation," I admitted. He raised an eyebrow but didn't ask questions, which I appreciated. That night, I brought the recorder home and showed it to Amanda. "Okay," I said, holding it up like I just solved some huge mystery. "This is going to settle things once and for all." "What is that?" she asked, narrowing her eyes. "It's a voice-activated recorder. It'll pick up any sound we make during the night. If I snore, we'll hear it. If it's you, we'll hear that too." She crossed her arms and looked skeptical. "You're really going to all this trouble just because you don't want to admit you snore?" "I don't snore," I said firmly. "And this is how I'm going to prove it." She didn't say much after that, just shrugged and went to get ready for bed. I set the recorder up on the nightstand, double-checked that it was working, and then turned it on. "All right," I said, mostly to myself. "Let's see who's right." Amanda rolled her eyes as she climbed into bed. "You're ridiculous," she muttered. "Maybe," I replied, lying down and pulling the blanket over myself. "But at least we'll finally know the truth." I turned off the light and stared at the ceiling for a while, listening to Amanda's breathing as she fell asleep. I felt a strange mix of irritation and determination. It wasn't just about the snoring anymore. It was about proving to myself that I wasn't losing my mind. Eventually, I closed my eyes and drifted off, knowing that by morning, I'd have the answers I needed. In the morning, I got up earlier than usual. I couldn't wait any longer. I needed to know what the recorder had picked up. The constant accusations about snoring were getting to me, and I just wanted it all to stop. I grabbed the recorder from the nightstand, tiptoeing so I wouldn't wake Amanda. Sitting at the kitchen table, I turned it on and listened. For the first few moments, it was just silence, then soft breathing, and finally, there it was, snoring. But it wasn't just me, it was both of us. Amanda had her moments, and so did I. I chuckled to myself, imagining the look on her face when I played this for her. Finally, the argument would be settled. When Amanda woke up, I met her in the kitchen with the recorder. "All right, Amanda," I said with a grin. "Prepare to eat your words." She raised an eyebrow. "Oh, really? Let's hear it." I pressed play and we listened together. Sure enough, there was her snoring, followed by mine. It was undeniable. Amanda's eyes widened for a second before she burst out laughing. Okay, you win. I guess we're both at fault." "Exactly," I said, laughing along with her. "No more blaming me, all right?" She smiled and shook her head. "Fine. Truce." For the first time in a while, it felt like things were light again. We joked about it for the rest of the morning, and I felt relieved. I had been gearing up for more tension, but now it seemed like this silly snoring battle was finally behind us. I planned to return the recorder to my colleague that day, but with everything going on at work, I completely forgot about it until late in the afternoon. When I finally remembered, it hit me. I never turned the thing off. And judging by Amanda's reaction, she probably hadn't noticed it either. Before I handed it back, I figured I'd turn it off and clear any leftover recordings. The last thing I wanted was for my colleague to accidentally overhear anything personal. I didn't think much of it, just a quick cleanup. But as I hit play to check the latest recording, I froze. It was Amanda's voice. "Nick, I can't keep doing this," she said, her tone low and tense. "Nick?" My stomach dropped, and my hand tightened around the recorder as I braced myself to listen further. I sat there frozen, staring at the recorder like it might explain itself if I waited long enough. Amanda's voice kept playing, clear and unmistakable, but the words were like a punch to the gut. "They're your kids, Nick," she said, her voice soft but steady. "Jason and Lily are yours. He doesn't know, and honestly, he'll never figure it out." There was a low chuckle, a man's voice. "Nick, maybe we'll make it 3, he said. "Another kid for me, and he can keep raising them." Amanda laughed, but it was cold, mocking. "He's such a loser, Nick. I don't even know how I've kept this up for so long. But you're the only one I've ever really loved." I hit pause. My hand was shaking so badly, I nearly dropped the recorder. I sat there in stunned silence, replaying the words in my head. My kids, Jason and Lily. How could she say they weren't mine? How could she laugh about it like this was some kind of joke? Nick. The name rattled around in my head, but I couldn't place it. Who was Nick? Was this real? Was there a camera crew somewhere, waiting to jump out and tell me I was on some cruel prank show? It didn't feel real. Couldn't be real. I glanced around the kitchen, half expecting to see hidden cameras or hear someone yell, "Gotcha!" But the house was silent. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator and the pounding of my heart in my ears. I couldn't face Amanda. Not yet. My mind was racing with questions, none of which I had answers to. What if this was all some kind of misunderstanding? Or a joke that had gone too far? But what if it wasn't? I grabbed my jacket and went outside. The fresh air was strong, but it didn't help. My chest felt tight, my head spinning with everything I just heard. I walked around the backyard aimlessly, trying to piece things together, but nothing made sense. Eventually, I sat down under the old oak tree in the corner of our yard. I leaned back against the rough bark and stared up at the sky, watching the clouds drift by like they had no idea my world had just been shattered. I don't know when it happened, but at some point, exhaustion caught up with me. The weight of it all was too much, and I fell asleep right there in the backyard, still clutching the recorder in my hand. I didn't want to go back inside. Not yet. Couldn't. When I woke up under the oak tree, my body felt stiff, but my mind was racing. I couldn't sit with this any longer. I needed answers. No more guessing, no more avoiding. It was time to face the truth, no matter how much it hurt. I decided to go to Amanda's work. If there was a Nick and he was real, I'd find out there. My heart pounded in my chest as I drove, every worst-case scenario flashing through my mind. Part of me still hoped I'd show up and realize it was all just some giant misunderstanding. When I arrived at the bank, I didn't go straight to Amanda's office. I hesitated in the lobby, scanning the faces of her coworkers. That's when I saw him. The secretary greeted him with a smile. "Good morning, Nick," she said. Nick, that name again. It was him. I didn't think, I just acted. Rage surged through me like a fire, and before I knew it, I was charging toward him. "You son of a—" I grabbed him by the collar and threw the first punch. Nick stumbled backward, barely managing to stay on his feet. "What the hell is wrong with you?" he shouted, trying to shield himself. "You know what's wrong," I roared, hitting him again. "You think you can just take my family? My kids?" Amanda appeared out of nowhere, her face pale and streaked with tears. She screamed, "Michael, stop. Please, let him go." I barely registered her words. The fury was blinding. "Don't tell me to stop," I snapped, swinging again. Nick tried to block me, but he was no match. "Michael, please," Amanda cried, grabbing my arm. "Let him go. He can't fight you back. Don't leave the children without a father." Her words stopped me cold. I froze, my fists still clenched. "What did you just say?" I growled, turning to face her. Tears streamed down her face as she screamed, "The children, they're not yours. Nick is their father." It was like the ground had been ripped out from under me. I stared at her, trying to process what I just heard. "You used me," I said slowly, my voice trembling. "Yes," she spat, no regret in her voice. "I used you until Nick could find us a new home. You were nothing but a placeholder." The room went silent. Her colleagues had gathered, staring at the scene with wide eyes. Amanda didn't care. She didn't take back a single word. The fury surged again, stronger than before. I turned back to Nick and swung even harder, but someone pulled me back before I could land another blow. Security had arrived, and they dragged me away, kicking and yelling. As I was forced out of the building, Amanda stood there, glaring at me, her face twisted with anger. She didn't chase after me. She didn't apologize. She just stood there, watching as I was escorted away. Her words echoed in my head. "The children aren't yours. You were nothing but a placeholder." When I got home that day, everything was quiet. Too quiet. The house felt empty in a way I couldn't explain, and as soon as I stepped inside, I knew something was wrong. The kids' laughter was missing. Their toys weren't scattered on the floor, and the faint smell of Amanda's perfume that usually lingered in the air was gone. I called out, "Jason? Lily?" but there was no answer. I checked their rooms, hoping maybe they were napping or playing quietly, but the sight that greeted me made my stomach drop. Their beds were stripped, their clothes and toys gone. It was like they had vanished. I sank to the floor in Jason's room, staring at the empty shelves where his dinosaur books used to be. My chest felt tight, and I struggled to breathe. Amanda had taken them. She'd packed them up and left while I was out, and she hadn't even said a word. The kids didn't understand what was happening. I was sure of that. They loved me. We were close. They didn't know about the fights, the lies, or the betrayal. To them, I was just Dad. I could only imagine how scared and confused they were, being ripped away from the life they knew. I wasn't going to let this go. I wasn't going to lose my kids, no matter what Amanda said or did. She left me no choice but to fight for them. The first thing I did was file for divorce. I didn't want to drag it out or leave any room for Amanda to manipulate the situation further. This was about justice now, about doing what was right for Jason and Lily. Then I started making calls. I reached out to my colleagues, hoping someone might know something, anything, about where Amanda had gone. I even called her mother, desperate for any information. "Where is she?" I asked, my voice shaking with anger and desperation. "Where is Amanda hiding the kids?" Her mother sighed, her tone cold and distant. "Michael, I'm not going to help you. After everything that happened, you don't deserve to know." "What are you talking about?" I snapped. "I'm their father. I have a right to know where my children are." "You attacked Amanda and Nick," she said sharply. "She told me everything. You're dangerous, Michael. We're all worried about the kids' safety." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Amanda had turned everyone against me. She'd spun the story to make me look like the villain, the unstable father who couldn't be trusted. It didn't matter what the truth was. She was determined to take my family away from me, and no one wanted to hear my side of the story. I felt the walls closing in. My colleagues were hesitant to get involved. Her family refused to talk, and even mutual friends were dodging my calls. Everywhere I turned, there was a dead end. It was like she'd planned this, carefully orchestrating every move to isolate me and cut me off from the people who might have supported me. But I wasn't going to give up. Jason and Lily were my kids, no matter what Amanda said. I'd raised them, loved them, and given them everything I had. They deserved to know that I wasn't going to stop fighting for them. Even as Amanda's lies spread, even as the world seemed to turn against me, I made a promise to myself. I would get my kids back. Whatever it took, I wasn't going to let her win. The court didn't make things any easier for me. After everything that happened with Nick, they ordered me to attend group therapy for anger management. On top of that, Amanda was granted custody of Jason and Lily. I was only allowed to see them under her supervision. The thought of being reduced to a visitor in my kids' lives was devastating, and I tried contesting the decision, but the security cameras had caught everything. The fight, the punches, and Amanda's desperate cries. No matter how much I argued that I'd been provoked, it didn't change the outcome. I was labeled the angry father who needed to prove himself. Life became a blur after that. I quit my job at the airport. It wasn't like I could go back there anyway after everything that happened. Instead, I took a chance and opened my own small consulting firm. It wasn't much at first, but my friends and colleagues rallied behind me. They sent clients my way, doing what they could to support me through what they called my rebuilding phase. I worked nonstop, pouring everything I had into the business. I didn't have the luxury of taking breaks or sleeping in. Most nights, I'd grab a few hours of sleep on the couch in my office, only to wake up and start all over again. For 6 months, I worked like that, pushing myself to save up enough money for a good lawyer, someone who could help me fight for my kids. Every time I felt like giving up, I thought about Jason and Lily. I thought about their laughter, their hugs, and the way they used to call me the best dad ever. I wasn't going to let them down. Then, one day, it hit me out of nowhere, like a light bulb flickering on after months in the dark. My colleague, the one who'd lent me the recorder, casually asked when I planned to return it. "Hey, Michael," he said, "you ever going to give me back that fancy voice-activated recorder? You know, the one I let you borrow?" My stomach dropped. I'd completely forgotten about it in the chaos of everything. But then I remembered something else. Something important. The recording. The one where Amanda's voice had spilled all her secrets. About Nick, the kids, and her plan to use me until they had a new home. It had all been there, captured on that device. I stared at my colleague, my mind racing. "Yeah," I said quickly. "I'll bring it to you soon. I just need to clean it up a bit." He laughed and waved me off, but my hands were already shaking. The recorder. That recording could be the key to everything. I just hadn't realized it at the time. The recording changed everything. With that evidence, alongside months of hard work and preparation, I finally had a chance to fight back. I hired a great lawyer with the money I'd saved from sleepless nights and relentless hours at my consulting firm. Together, we compiled everything we could. The recording of Amanda's damning conversation, testimonies from mutual friends and relatives who'd witnessed her behavior, proof of my progress in anger management, and a clean bill of mental health from a psychiatrist. Slowly but surely, the tide began to turn in my favor. The court ruled that I could take the kids on weekends and see them during holidays. It wasn't everything, but it was a step forward. Jason and Lily's faces lit up when they heard the news, and for the first time in months, I felt like I was getting a piece of my life back. I didn't take revenge on Amanda. There wasn't any point. Life seemed to handle that for me. She started showing up to our exchanges looking worn down. Her clothes were older, sometimes frayed, and she'd stopped putting effort into dressing the kids. When I asked about it, she shrugged and said, "You'll feed them, right? You can buy them what they need." Friends told me she had moved to a poorer area after struggling to pay rent. The bank replaced her quickly with a younger, more eager employee. A student, they said. As for Nick, word got around that he'd poured his entire inheritance into cryptocurrency, only to watch it vanish. Whether it was true or not, I don't know. I saw him on the street a few times buying sketchy-looking packages. He looked disheveled, like life had taken a toll on him too. Meanwhile, I worked harder than ever. I was determined to give Jason and Lily the stability and happiness they deserved. Over time, Amanda's situation worsened. Her rent increased and her new husband, some guy who'd been in and out of trouble, was taken away by the police. I later learned he had a long history of issues, including being registered at a dispensary, but he often ran away to avoid treatment. Eventually, he lost control, started selling their belongings, and left Amanda begging him to come home. When she came to me one day, defeated and desperate, I saw my chance. "Let me take the kids full-time," I said. "They'll have a stable home, and you can still see them on weekends. They'll never go without." At first, she resisted. She cried, yelled, and accused me of trying to take them away from her completely. But when she saw there was no other way, she finally agreed. She signed the papers, moved in with her parents, and we reached an understanding. Jason and Lily lived with me, but Amanda could visit when I was at work or have them over for a few hours on weekends. Life started to stabilize. I focused on building my business, but I didn't forget to prioritize my time with the kids. Every weekend, we'd have little adventures, park trips, movie nights, and lazy Sundays filled with board games. Then something unexpected happened. I reconnected with someone I hadn't seen in years, our neighbor's daughter, Emma. She'd been in love with me back in college, and I'd had warm feelings for her too, but at the time I'd chosen Amanda. Now Emma and I crossed paths again, and it felt right. She was kind, thoughtful, and patient with the kids. Jason loved showing her his newest dinosaur facts, and Lily insisted Emma braid her hair every time she came over. Slowly, we grew closer, and one day, Emma confessed that she'd never stopped having feelings for me. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I had a partner I could truly trust. Now, life has come full circle. I have a job I love, a wife who makes me feel like the luckiest man alive, and two incredible kids who are thriving. Everything feels like it's finally fallen into place.